Subscribe, like, comment and share to support the channel. Thank you for the support.
The crowd of students and teachers continued to remain shocked over what Pietro had announced to them. They murmured amongst themselves about the word killer and that his dream was to be one. Even blind mommy and her dog were both shocked to see what the old man was doing. Pietro then went to add on to say that he had forgotten one thing. He announces once again that he was going to be a killer that was good at studying. Students gathered there were recording what Pietro had said. They laughed amongst themselves over what he said about being a killer that is good with studies. Others were impressed by his confidence, which seemed pretty cool to them. But a big boy soon appears and slams his way to the front of the crowd of students as he tells them to move aside. Soon enough a group of students were gathered in front of Pietro on the stage. He looks at them and figured that they had fallen for his bait. One of the guys called out to Pietro as killer. The big boy then asked him if he was the one that seduced Yi-jin as he handed his bag to his friend behind him. Pietro didn't understand the question and asked the big boy about what he was saying. The big boy then began to cry as he called Pietro a damn bastard, but he was glad to see this reaction as it meant that it was a good setup to gain attention. It was revealed that the big boy was called Jang Yul, who for the longest time had only eyes for one woman. The lady beside him was his girlfriend called Yi-jin, and that they had been dating for 22 days. They were Divine Honor High School's best lover, but today was the day that he had his girlfriend stolen by Pietro as she was seen blushing heavily at him. Yul then decides to take a big swing at our boy for revenge, while Pietro couldn't believe that this was happening over their first time meeting. Jang Yul was the guy who conquered the whole of Mapo district with his fists alone. But Pietro was able to easily dodge his attack and went in for the counter-strike. This interaction with Pietro was the first time that Jang Yul had felt the sensation known as death. One Punch Man vibes. Seeing Pietro's fist about to hit him, Jang Yul immediately closes his eyes as he apologizes to Yi-jin for nothing being able to protect him, but it was revealed that he had never protected her before. But nothing happens as Pietro stopped the punch from reaching his face, so instead of a punch Pietro decided to simply give him a forehead flick. That forehead flick was enough to make Jang Yul collapse onto the ground in fear while his team called out to him in shock, "Hey!" shouted a voice as a teacher appears on stage in a hurry. He pulls out a red card as he shouts at the students along with Pietro on why they think that they could fight in this sacred school. He pulls on the cheek of Pietro while asking him what his father does. Pietro calmly replies back to the teacher that he believes that his father was probably dead. Hearing this made the teacher apologize immediately, but he still continues to pull onto Pietro's cheek as he led him off the stage, telling Pietro to follow him and lectured him on how he dared to do this to a teacher who was like a deity. Young Yul was still confused by what was going on as he continues to speak out loud to let him go, but his friend looked to him to tell him that Pietro wasn't holding on to him at all. The students on the second floor continued to wonder about what they should do. One of them wonders if they should find out more, which another student agrees with as it would be fun. He swipes the dust off Pietro's neck through a glass panel with his middle finger and suggested to the others that they should kill him. As the teacher continued to pull Pietro through the crowd of students, they couldn't believe how crazy he was and noted that Pietro was in his emo phase, which was freaking cool to them. But a familiar face is revealed as the young lady from before was also a student at this school. She was shocked to see Pietro here and wonders if he wanted to get rid of this school. The scene then changed to a voice asking Eun-byul, the young lady from before, if the seat beside her was vacant. She was shocked to see that it was Pietro and exclaimed out loud about why he was here. Pietro decides to take a seat beside her and tells her that people kept following him, so he fled, which made him wonder what she was doing here. She tells him that she didn't have any appetite as she ate something, but Pietro didn't believe her at all, as her tray was filled to the top with all kinds of food. Eun-byul then began to think about something as she sat beside Pietro. A flashback is seen from when they were in the restaurant together. Pietro kneels in front of her to ask her if she wanted to live as he showed her a picture. He then tells her that if she does, she needed to say that the guy in the photo he was holding was the guy that killed her boss and that this will become her lifeline. The flashback ends as Eun-byul reminds Pietro that she had kept her promise to him, which made her question why he had come and find her. Pietro reveals to her that he didn't mean to find her at all, but his words were no use as Eun-byul continues to question him about whether he was going to kill her and that because of him, the company was only keeping her under surveillance, which had made things hard for her. Hearing that made Pietro remind her that she should put up with it as she was only alive because of him, but Eun-byul was being stubborn as she replies back that she was able to survive on her own. She then tells Pietro that he had no idea about what this place was and how scary it is, and on top of that he didn't even know who she was. All these things made her question Pietro about what an outsider like him can do. Pietro remains silent for a moment in deep thought before telling Eun-byul that she could help him as she turns to leave, but she asks him about why she would do that. Pietro tells her that she was in the same boat as him, someone who doesn't know anything about. I'm counting on you, said Pietro as he revealed her own real name to unveil, which was Yuna. Hearing her real name causes Yuna to turn around as she wondered how Pietro knew about it. But our boy disappears like Batman in an instant as he was nowhere to be seen. The scene then changes to the Divine Honor High School athletic competition from where students were cheering on one another. We turn to Jonathan, who was a student that had been referred to as the Usain Bolt at Divine Honor High School. He held the 400-meter sprint high school record, but it seems to him that today was going to be his retirement because of Pietro, who was seen casually running ahead of Jonathan while still wearing his school uniform and sneakers. Jonathan was then seen crying in the stands while Jang Yul comforts him. Pietro, on the other hand, was surrounded by a crowd of girls while a dark shadowy figure looks at him from afar. Pietro was then saying out loud the numbers that the stick was pointing to on a paper. It turns out that he was doing an eye test, which was shocking to the students around him as they couldn't believe that he could up to 6.0. Some of them wonder if he was Mongolian, while Pietro was curious to know if there was a 8.0 test. We then switch to a cooking lesson where the teacher introduces to the students that today was when they will learn how to cut fruits extravagantly. Once again, our boy attracts the ladies from all ages as they tell him that knives were dangerous and that if it was difficult then he could ask them for help. But Pietro was no noob when it comes to a knife as he checks out the one that he was given. Some time had passed and Pietro had given birth to a rabbit made of fruit. He tells the teacher that he was inexperienced and that he had tried his best in making it. The students couldn't believe what they were seeing as some of them think that the apple was breathing. So what are you going to do? Said a student as he pokes the teacher with a broom handle. The student tells the teacher that he didn't want to clean while calling him a little loser bitch. The teacher couldn't believe that these rascals were doing this to a teacher, but the students didn't care as they continued to taunt him about how he couldn't do anything to them. The teacher then asks them about what their fathers were doing as the students whipped out their phones to record him. They recorded the teacher while asking him if he was making fun of their parents and told him that they could get his teaching license suspended due to emotional and child abuse. All these insults made the teacher call them rascals for violating his authority as a teacher, but the students didn't care at all. One of them even slams the teacher onto the ground, telling the teacher that he was the school authority. The students then asked the teacher if he knew what was scarier than penalty points, and that if they sue him his teaching license would get suspended. The other students wonder if they should upload the video they recorded onto TikTok. But just as one of them was about to upload the video, he noticed something. They spotted Pietro, who they nicknamed as Killer, coming towards them. Pietro sees the situation and asks the students if they were the ones that hit the teacher, but the students threatened Pietro to move along as he couldn't even do anything to them. But Pietro didn't want to move and asked the student about what would happen if he doesn't move. The student replied that he would spit, of course, and proceeds to do it. The other students laughed while Pietro gave off a nasty glare. The student then asks him about what he was glaring at and that if he doesn't want to die, he should F off quietly, but then he decided to take a swing towards our boy. Pietro immediately dodges the attack easily, which catches the student off guard. He continues to throw out various punches, but none of them landed onto Pietro. The other students were laughing over this as they wondered how he was not able to hit Pietro even once. Even the student giving the punches soon wondered why he couldn't hit as Pietro continued to dodge with murder in his eyes. He soon counterattacks by leg sweeping the student, which causes him to fall flat onto the ground. Another one of the bullies appeared behind Pietro and tells him to eat the brick that he was holding, but a quick upwards motion stops him in his tracks. Pietro had swung his arm up so fast that it destroyed the brick that the bully was holding into pieces. The three bullies were then seen apologizing to the teacher based on Pietro's instructions. With their arms raised in the air, they hopped away from Pietro while shouting at him that justice will prevail. Seeing their reaction made him comment that it was why he won in the first place. He soon turns around to ask the teacher if he was okay, but the teacher continued to tremble in shock over seeing his student fight again in front of him. Pietro ignores his words and reached out to the cell phone that the bullies had dropped from earlier. The phone contained the video from when they bullied the teacher, but as he was reaching for the phone on the ground, the teacher suddenly became an MMA fighter and could be seen giving out a spinning kick towards Pietro. A loud sound is heard as the teacher commented that it was to be expected. He noted that his eye for people was rather accurate. Pietro wonders what he was saying after blocking his kick with just one arm. The teacher noted that he knew that Pietro wasn't a normal guy, based on the fact that the cup that the teacher was holding onto hasn't spilled a single drop while Pietro was fighting with it. The teacher soon asks Pietro where he learned to do that, but soon changes the question to why did he learn that. Pietro reveals to the teacher that he learned it in order to get revenge against the glories that stole his life. He continues to tell the teacher that his house, family and money, everything that he had accumulated had been lost and that he was the same as dead. The teacher then asks Pietro if he had any thoughts on joining the volunteering club as he sipped the cup of coffee in his hand. This is one jacked teacher. Hearing that question brings a smile to Pietro's face as he had been waiting for this moment. Flashbacks could be seen from when he had participated in various school activities and that it was revealed that the teacher was the one who had been watching him from the shadows. The teacher known as Li Guangyu was also known as Glory's killer instructor. Pietro and Guangyu soon walked through the halls of the school where he tells Pietro that the school had a killer development class which was more like a volunteering club. A few children learned the ways of life as a killer and noted that Pietro was a rare transfer student, but warned him that it won't be easy. They soon reached a door where Pietro slowly opens it as Guangyu welcomes him. This was where glory killers are fostered, the volunteering club. Seeing all the NPC-looking characters made Pietro wonder if this place was really where they raised killers. Guangyu soon calls for everyone's attention and tells them to focus as he and Pietro stood in front of everyone. He introduces Pietro as a new volunteer who will be working with them from today onwards. Yuna wore a shocked expression on her face during Pietro's introduction as she continues to misunderstand his intentions while thinking why he was here. She continues to look at Pietro and wonders why he was staring at her while hoping that he doesn't say anything, but our boy sends her a cute wink that sends shivers down her spine as she grabs notice of it. Yuna quickly turns her head away from Pietro, thinking that either something went into his eye or that he was trying to tell her that he was going to kill her. Pietro then introduces himself with his fake name called Kim Sungu and thanks the class for their warm welcome, but all he thought of was that this was a very ordinary-looking place where they raised killers. "Warm welcome my ass," said a voice. Two buff lords appeared to tell Pietro that they didn't care about what the F his name was. Looking at these two made Pietro realize that there were at least some people who looked fit at least. The student with some messed up ears was known as Dokgo Hung, who was from the 58th generation of the Honor Orphanage. His special trait was speed and something else that was currently unknown. He tells Pietro that only people from the Honor Orphanage are allowed in here. The second student called Jay, who belonged to the same generation as Dokgo, has the special traits called Ultra Strength and Grappling. He wonders how it made sense for an outsider like Pietro to be here, but all Pietro could think of that he was also from the Honor Orphanage and was the first generation. The teacher seems to ignore their words and tells the class that they should just do a simple welcoming party. Two other students spoke out in unison that they should have some punch. Hearing the word punch made Pietro wonder what they meant by it. Those innocent-looking students soon pulled out a weapon each, saying that they meant blood punch. Looking at this scene made Pietro realize that Glory had taught them well, but the two buff lords called out to Pietro to come to them first as they should be the ones that welcome him. Yuna appeared amongst them and tells them that they should stop as she knew that they might all end up dead. But one of the buff lords swipes her away and tells her to get out of their way unless she wanted to be beaten up alongside him. Yuna could only think that she tried to warn and save these buff lords. The two buff lords then asked Pietro if he knew how to fight. He replies back to them that he kinda knew as he had already fought more than 1,500 times. The two buff lords tell him that he better be nervous as this fight was going to be his last, but with no surprise. Pietro manages to block both attacks from them by simply stretching out his arms. Dokgo continues to tell Pietro that this place wasn't for some neighborhood hooligan as people like him didn't know what they had to risk their lives for. Jay tells him that it was to become the best killer in the world just like him. Hearing the word him made Pietro wonder who it was, but it was soon revealed that they wanted to be like disciple Pietro. Play holy music now. Dokgo continues to tell Pietro that there was no place here for a nepotism baby like him. They soon all backed away from one another. Pietro dusts off his hand using his pants and tells the two buff lords that he was getting tired of this. He tells them that it was annoying to listen to both of them talking and that they should just come at him together. Hearing those words angers the gym bros as they both exclaimed that he was out of his damn mind. They continued to lunge at Pietro while exclaiming that he had no idea how much weight their 18 years of living possess. "You nepotism baby." But all Pietro thought of was that he had lived for 65 years. Some time had passed as the class was impressed by the Dokgo brothers. They could be seen sweating immensely as one of the classmates told them that they should have gone easy on him, but Dokgo tells him that he didn't even use half of his strength. The class continues to cheer them on and commented that Pietro wasn't even able to do anything at all. The scene then changes to Pietro who was walking back when all of a sudden Yuna calls out to him. She questions him on whether he was underestimating the volunteer club, but Pietro remained clueless by what she meant. She tells him that he couldn't fool her as she was watching him from earlier and not once did Pietro put any strength into his fist as he fought the gym brothers. He then tells her that he had always tried his best, but Yuna wasn't convinced as she had proof. Unlike the gym bros who were sweating profusely, Pietro wasn't even sweating a bit. With her hand pressed up against the wall, she locks Pietro within her grasp, questioning him about his reason and that she had been suspicious of him since he was in the school. The most important question was why he was hiding his powers. "What are you scheming?" she asks straight to his face, but Pietro replies if she really wanted to know, so she tells him to just say it. But our boy takes the chance to escape by sliding onto the ground like a snake. He apologizes to her and says that it was time for lunch, but she called out to him that it was midnight. The scene then changes to a bus parking lot where only one bus was lighted. A driver appears with a coffee stick in his mouth as he sang a song. He clapped his feet together over the fact that he had received 1 million won just for renting a bus and that today was a really lucky day. But the driver was stunned by something as he spoke out loud that he was sure that he had taken a group appointment today. He looks at just one man and wonders why there was only a single person here. The man greets him, but the driver asks him about where the others were. The man tells him that it was just him as he carried his luggage, but informs the driver that he had a lot of stuff as it was revealed that there were even more luggages. The driver was surprised but still went on to help the man load them into the bus. But something attracts his attention as he held onto one of the luggage bags. But the man soon swipes his hand off the luggage while asking the driver if he wanted to bet on something. The man leans in real close to the driver's face and tells him to guess what was in the suitcases. The scene then changes to the bus moving along the road. As he drove the bus, the driver couldn't help but stare at the man through his rearview mirror. He thought about how he didn't accept the bet from earlier, but he knew what he saw. The luggage that he held was definitely moving. We return back to the school where the teacher informs the class that they had a new quest. The client was Daya Group's chairman Choi Yoon-chong, which most of them had heard of as he was one of Glory's biggest sponsors. He informs the class that the team who will be able to succeed will be able to receive a volunteer certificate with the chairman's recommendation. In other words, they would officially become a killer. Hearing those words made Yuna and Pietro realize that it was time. The class soon asks the teacher about what the quest was about. He reveals that it was about recapturing. There have been frequent kidnapping of teenagers recently, but the problem is that one of the kids who got kidnapped was the chairman's only son. One of the students questions if they had to recapture the son and why wouldn't the chairman just call the police. The teacher then tells them that Chairman Choi wants revenge as a pissed-off daddy is seen holding the photo of his captured son. He then tells the class that they all just needed to save the son and to raise their hand if they wanted to do this. The students discussed amongst themselves on whether they should take the quest as it meant that they would be able to graduate as killers right now instead of waiting 2 more years. But some were hesitant to take it on as they felt that something wasn't right with it, as something this big was usually given to the adults. A foot appears onto one of the students' head as Jay tells the rest of the students that they could rot here for all he cared. It turns out that the gym bros had decided to take on the quest themselves. But Jay informs his brother that they weren't the only ones to take the quest. Pietro and Yuna had both raised their hands as well in order to take on the quest. Yuna was surprised to see that Pietro had raised his hand as well, which made her wonder why he was copying her. Pietro tells her that he had it raised up since the beginning, but she threatens him that if he was lying then she would cut off his hand. Pietro hears this and tells her to not say anything scary like that. The gym bros informed the teacher that they were already prepared and wondered if they could just go and beat them up, but he tells them no and that they needed to do something else first. Screams could be heard as Pietro thought about how he finally got the chance after entering this school, but couldn't believe that they were recovering a kidnapped victim in an amusement as he and Yuna were both seen together holding snacks while wearing ear hats.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.